These are interesting days in Guyana, and they've been made more interesting by the Commission of Inquiry into what took place in the post-election period at GCOM. So I'm sure that the country is following what is going on, and the several revelations that are emerging that point to a pattern with intellectual authors designed to rig the last elections. I have noticed that the opposition has gone quiet on the entire issue. Now, for a group of people who've been very vocal about them winning the elections, that they've won the elections, and they had evidence to that effect, and that who filed a petition in court, I would like to think that they would want to utilize this opportunity to clear their names and to present their case, so that the court case that they have filed would be vastly strengthened by the alternate view. But they have gone quiet. So I'm hoping that Mr. Ramjatan and Cathy Hughes, who were the champions of the Russian involvement in Guyana's elections, you'd recall the passionate exposition by Ramjatan about he had to deport these Russians who would come into the country, several of them, and he was looking for an additional one. He deported 4 of them who were here to tamper with the process at GCOM. That Ramjatan, if he had any sense of decency, will now take that evidence, because I'm sure that the commissioners would want to hear about the Russians' involvement in our elections. So he and Cathy Hughes should present themselves before the COI and present and give to the commissioners all this evidence they have about Russians' involvement. Or if they don't do that, they should apologize to this country for the lies that they told to the people of Guyana. They would have absolutely no integrity. Not that I believe they have any, but they would prove that what I always believe, that they had no integrity, is true. But the opportunity presents itself for them to expose the Russian involvement in our elections. Secondly, I'm hoping that Mr. Norton himself will take his appearing, disappearing statements of polls and show the commission how they won based on those statements of poll that we are told that are in his possession, but he's preserving them for a glorious day when he would reveal them in the court. So he has these SOPs that will prove that APNU won the elections. I'm sure that the commissioners would want to hear about that too. Now, in the testimonies that we have witnessed, isn't it strange that when we had evidence about the use of the spreadsheet and the objection to the use of the spreadsheet, that the only group that was not objecting to the use of the spreadsheet was APNU, because they knew what was on the spreadsheet and they were there to support it. So that is becoming very apparent in the testimonies, that the only group that was not objecting, that was happening. I would like somebody to present to the COI how Volder Lawrence's signature got on the RO's declaration, Mingo's declaration, using the fraudulent figures, when there was no requirement for any of the party agents to sign the RO declaration. But in that case, her signature miraculously appeared on the false declaration that Mingo made. And when it became an issue, and Mingo made his second declaration, which was again false, Carol Joseph's signature then appeared on the second statement. So I have them here, so we can then just post them up, and I hope that the two of them would appear before the COI to explain to the commissioners how their signatures got on the declaration that Mingo made, the two fraudulent declarations that he made, when no other party agent or no other party signed onto these documents or were required to sign onto them. That's one with Volder Lawrence's signature, and the second is with Carol Joseph's signature. So I'm still hoping that that will come out. And that will be the central tie-in, because so far it seems that it was a conspiracy just in GCOM, which is proven. But the signature ties the GCOM officials to the political masters and the intellectual authors of this. Volder Lawrence at that time was chairman of the PNC. And so this is the crucial link that ties them together, that it was a joint conspiracy. I would still like to know who really called Roxanne Myers, who had her number to call her, and when she gave the phone to Cummins. Since she was a central figure, and you would recognize that in all of the contentious, controversial moments in the videos that have been released, some which are I didn't even realize that these videos were being taken by people in their private their cameras, etc., coming out now, that at every crucial moment she was there. When Cummins was threatening the donors, she was the lone GCOM person in the room, hovering in the background, and then she got a call from someone and gave the phone to Cummins. When Mingo was making the fraudulent declaration and the uproar was there, again, she was chaperoning Mingo. She was the key chaperone. So, and all of this is emerging through the video evidence that's coming out. So I hope that APNU will participate. They will clear their name. They will present the evidence that they told the whole country, but more so misled their own supporters into believing they won the elections, when they tried 3 times to swear in the president based on the former president based on false results. They must be hanging their heads in shame, if they ever had any shame. That's frankly speaking, because they speak so boldly. And Vincent Alexander, who has become the mouthpiece of all of the technical issues, he should appear before the commission too, to speak about his role in that period. This is a very important time for the country, and I'm hoping that whatever emerges from this, the COI, that it would serve as a basis, not just to reinforce the criminal action that is taken has been instituted against some of the people, but that these revelations, some of which took place behind the scenes that we were not even aware of, that they would serve the basis for Ford holding other people accountable, particularly at GCOM. And I hope that the Commission would take steps, even administrative steps, against some of those people who were so deeply involved in the plot to rig the last elections. A shameful day, and this is what you recall. APNU didn't want a COI, and then they called for a COI, but they didn't expect that we will agree to the COI. They called for a COI, and the president said, fine, you want the COI, you would have the COI. So now they should really readily be participating in that. Now the second thing is that I've seen the usual racism emerging from APNU. And as we pointed out many times before at various fora, that this is the only thing that APNU desperately is hanging on to, racism. And it gets very vile sometimes, with the likes of Rickford Burke and the others. Very disrespectful, and often it's done by people who either have short memories or they have, as I said before, that's becoming a team. No shame. So I see Aubrey Rettimeyer or whatever saying that Guyanese mouthpiece in one of the newspapers that showed that the Prime Minister is becoming a mouthpiece for the government. The Prime Minister is the Prime Minister of the government. He speaks for the government. He's a member of the cabinet. He becomes a mouthpiece for the government. It's a stupid thing to say. That's the first thing. But his main thing was the racism. Oh, the Prime Minister, they were disappointed when Mark Phillips put his name down to be the prime ministerial candidate. Many Afro-Guyanese were disappointed. He was disappointed because the Prime Minister brought credibility to the list. Unlike the likes of Rettimeyer and the others, they had no credibility whatsoever. I think he was at Sarah. I don't know if there's the same one, but could be many of them like that. I don't know if it's the same one who wrote this. So he laments about Afro-Guyanese presence in the government. That's his article. And just look at the duplicity here. So the last government had a few Indo-Guyanese. Nagamutu was the prime minister. What the Herdmanston Accord, the Lilendal Accord said that they signed up, said that the prime minister should chair the cabinet. The prime minister will be responsible for identifying crucial names to be appointed in the government. The prime minister shall have a number of responsibilities they're listed. That was pre-election. Election took place, they got the rubber stamp Nagamutu there. Why did we say rubber stamp? He had no portfolio except for one thing, the state media. And you know the state media has boards. Kwame McCoy today has a bigger portfolio than Nagamutu had in the last government as prime minister. He has a bigger portfolio than Nagamutu as prime minister had. Then we saw another person, Ramjatan, came along, and Ramjatan wasn't good enough to run the Ministry of Home Affairs. So they split the Ministry of Home Affairs and gave half to Felix and left half with Ramjatan. Ramjatan loved the other half because it had gun licenses, and you know what happened there. A lot of sales took place there in that period. But he loved that half. So today, we have Robeson Ben now. We pull the ministry back together, and Mo Robeson Ben now is in charge of the entire ministry. We had Amnali knocking about some, what was it, social cohesion or something like that. The Indo-Guyanese, basically rubber stamp. Let's look at this government now. We have a prime minister who has a substantive portfolio. Telecommunications, energy, media, and he also has civil defense. Substantial portfolio. A powerful prime minister who can speak with credibility on behalf of this government. We have a Minister of Home Affairs who's a real Minister of Home Affairs, not a half Minister of Home Affairs, Robeson Ben, Afro-Guyanese. We have a Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Trade, Hugh Todd, substantive portfolio, who is Afro-Guyanese. We have a Minister of Trade, Tourism and Industry in Onej Waldron, substantial portfolio. We have a Minister of Public Works, biggest portfolio in the country, in one Edgehill. Joe Hamilton heads the Labor Ministry, and Kwame McCoy, he deals with media. We have 7 Afro-Guyanese holding substantive portfolios in this government. Contrast that with the past. They're integrally part of the government. So, of course, when they speak on behalf, they're mouthpieces of the government because they're the government. They're part of this government that we have, the PPP civic government. They're involved every single day in policy making, and they make policies themselves. So what do you expect them to do? Not to defend the policies that they make? Edgehill has to go and defend his ministry because he makes the policies in his ministries. He defends his projects because that's his portfolio. So when you see this obnoxious sort of behavior and the absence of any fact, they would never stop for a minute to consider that. So I see now, we've been arguing that on a fact-based assessment of our history, particularly our economic history, the political history is clear that APNU rigged elections when they were PNC for almost 3 decades to remain in office. That's well documented. They got back in office for five years and they tried to rig the elections again. A history of trying to steal elections, nothing else on the political side. We've seen a lot of our freedoms eroded in that period. People fled the country, etc. We saw what happened to our economy in the periods, and I contrast that. 1992, after 3 decades in office, we're the poorest country in the hemisphere, close to Haiti, and one of the poorest in the world, heavily indebted. We don't need to go back into that. But we said on a fact-based debate, we will demonstrate that Afro-Guyanese have always made more progress economically and in terms of ownership, land ownership, everything else, on the PPP governments that they've made on the anytime PNC governments, on a fact-based ownership. They've always avoided the factual comparisons. So I'm so pleased now that they seem to want to go the fact-based route. That we had some Nigel Hines and the usual suspects, the Nigel Hughes and Patterson now, they presented a document somewhere to say that Afro-Guyanese are not getting contracts. And they handpicked a few areas and selectively did that. So let's go down the fact-based route now. So we can start off with factually who has managed this country for all the people of Guyana. The first fact is that under APNU, 7,000 sugar workers were laid off without any regard for their welfare. If we had done that, laid off 7,000 people in the civil service, you would have had a massive hue and cry in this country about PPP laying off Afro-Guyanese. That was done. It seemed normal for most people. I didn't see the outrage in the media, nothing else. We pointed out that was contrary to their own promise that they made in the 2015 elections. We hear a lot about wages and salaries in the public service. APNU boasts that they increased wages and salaries by 70% in the civil service, public service. And that figure, we can challenge the figure. But look at the counterpart, that the sugar workers got zero in 5 years. Zero wage increases in 5 years. That is, nobody said much about that too. We can then go fact-based to land, who received land in the past. And we will point out that on land scholarships, the PPP have a stronger record and more Afro-Guyanese have benefited on those issues than any PNC government in the past, from 1966. We can demonstrate that under PPP governments, more Afro-Guyanese got land, etc. We can show that under the PPP you have more small Afro-Guyanese owned small businesses than ever before under any APNU government. We can demonstrate that with numbers. We can demonstrate that in the period. I would like to do a comparison on value, how many Afro-Guyanese, what percentage of civil works they got under the 5 years of APNU. You remember BK and a few others getting some massive contracts. Well, now about 30% of the contractors in public works, new contractors, are Afro-Guyanese, because you have to start by incubating if they're not there. APNU did not do that. They may have small contracts at this time, but a dedicated effort to grow a contracting core that is more balanced in this country, across Guyana. We can deal with that. So I would love to have a fact-based debate on them. And then we can go with civil service employment. So if that's the case, if you want balance everywhere, we don't keep numbers in the civil service based on people's race, but I can say to you that across the government, people who are paid either through the joint services or the public service, that over 75% are Afro-Guyanese. Over 75% are Afro-Guyanese. So we can talk about that. We can talk about judiciary composition, the executive composition, and the legislature. And you will see that our country, it reflects at this level what we're talking about, especially under PPP governments. We make a dedicated effort to deal with it. So these people are convenient. And Nigel Hughes, who believes a man who made us, well, he had his political motives, that 34 was the majority of 65. Who believes him? Who has any credibility? Who we know, on one hand, is every case, who threatened to have mayhem in the street. I recall that. Mayhem in the street before, unless the president got rid of Rohi by a particular time. And then the next day, what happened at Agricola? Brought in, and a number of people were beaten. Poor children couldn't go home. We haven't forgotten that history. You recall people couldn't go home, children were walking, crying along the road. Women were molested and stuff like that. You can trace that to statements they made. So they're not interested in fairness. They're responding to the loss of privilege that they've had, and there are going to be some revelations soon. They've been saying, because 2 years have passed, I saw somebody said, Roysdale Ford, the PPP should have filed the case against Carl Joseph 2 years ago because 2 years have passed. Theft is theft. It could be filed anytime. They didn't have a worry about Soku harassing us. When Ramatar had to go luncheon, myself, Irfan Ali, Anil Nandala, Frank Anthony, everybody in the whole government, the last time we all had to go through Soku. Every single minister from the past government, Samuel Hines, etc., or even president. I didn't have a problem with that. They worry about Carl Joseph now and missing money at Marad. So the same Patterson, Patterson took this jaundice, what is called a jaundice analysis, convenient analysis to excite emotion among Afro-Guyanese. You're being excluded from the contracting. Now more Afro-Guyanese are working than when we took office. Under the Granger administration, it was a disaster for the whole country. Lots of people lost their jobs of every race. The sugar workers directly, but you had people in mining and forestry sector. Many of those people are working now because of the opportunities being provided. And you have more contractors now, Afro-Guyanese contractors. And we don't forget the period when the big guys walked away with most of the large contracts, and many of them were Indo-Guyanese on the APNU, because some of them were paying money to the officials there. So look at Patterson. Patterson suddenly has been reincarnated into Mr. Clean. He has make a full-fledged transformation, but he's before the court now. Patterson, the Never-Pro Realization Limited. That was a company owned by their consultant for the elections. They went out to tender for scales. They got a bid in for $10 million. They annulled the bid, and then directly, without getting a tender board waiver or cabinet, they signed a contract for $72 million with this company that had never supplied scales anywhere. This was their political consultant from Jamaica. The scales, they're in court now, the scales were never supplied. Patterson is charged for that, apart from other things. So we're not forgetting a lot of these things here. But if you want to go the fact-based route, the PPP is very happy about that. We should do that. But this is not what they're proposing now, is not fact-based. And what should happen is that I would urge maybe one or two of the people whose companies they mention, the Indo-Guyanese, to sue Patterson, Nigel Hughes, and Nigel Hines, because what they're claiming is that they got work there on those projects because they're Indian Guyanese. Not because they had a bid in and the bid was assessed on its merit. And I would urge them to file lawsuits against them. So let them go to court now and prove what they're saying, that these people got the work because they're Indians or Indo-Guyanese, not because they're Guyanese who put in a bid. In some cases, there was no Afro-Guyanese bid in some of the cases, but you have to award. So whoever wins it, you have a trouble with that, even if you have no bid from an Afro-Guyanese company. So this is, I would urge the people to file lawsuits against them. It's how, on the corruption side, today we see a headline: Western governments urge the, government should fight corruption. But in the same statement, I want to read you just a little bit. In Guyana, the government has held anti-corruption workshops and developed an anti-corruption manual. This comes out of the same joint statement that the international community just issued. Also, recent amendments to the Representation of the People Act have been made to try to further promote fair and transparent elections. In addition, the revised Natural Resources Fund Act allows for increased transparency and improved management over Guyana's natural resource wealth. Importantly, amendments to Guyana's anti-money laundering and counter the financing of terrorism legislation make clear its path to membership in the prestigious Egmont Group, which facilitates cooperation and intelligence sharing among international financial intelligence units to investigate and prevent money laundering and terrorist financing. We applaud the government for these actions. We applaud the government for these actions. But if you watch the headline, you would think that we were hammered about their massive increase in corruption. What they said, at the local level, governments should commit to anti-corruption initiatives in collaboration with the public and private sectors, as well as civil society. We have a civil society, and some people there, all they do is gripe instead of trying to address some of these issues. But it just shows how headlines can be very, very misleading. Now, on the elections matter and what's taking place at GCOM, we knew APNU doesn't want local government elections from a long time. They're not ready. They're having a hard time finding candidates. People don't want to go on the list. And who would want to go on a list when they know that they're facing a sure defeat in the local government elections? Nobody wants to go on the list. We have intelligence from the ground that they're gone to some communities. They haven't even gotten 2 names, and you require like maybe 50 backers. And they're very, very concerned. They're using the old PNC technique that Norton is familiar with. They believe you can bully PPP out of communities that they believe they own, Afro-Guyanese communities. We made it clear they don't own any community. We will work with people across the country in every community, regardless of how they voted, to bring development to everyone. And once they're prepared to work with the government, we will work in those communities. We're not going to allow any little overhang, tyrannical overhang, or people who believe that because they operated in the past in that manner, that it would be tolerated now, where you have some of these the local minions of the PNC, clones of the central office, who believe they can prevent even the president from going into a community. I had that when I was president. The mayor in New Amsterdam said, I shouldn't go to Angois Avenue. The people in Angois Avenue wanted development there. They wanted regularization. We had a controversial issue with regularization and a whole set of issues. I had to seek permission from him to go into a piece of sovereign Guyanese territory. This is the same attitude we see at Mako and the attempts to bully Minister Sonia Pariag in other areas. This is desperation. Desperation. They never went to these communities. They were very elitist. They were driving around the place, very elitist, never visited the communities. So they're very concerned now when this government and its ministers are going to those communities. So we don't believe they own anybody, and people will continue to work. We made it clear in 2018, we contested in every single local government area in this country because we are a national party. APNU in 2018 in government could not contest in all of the areas. We contested in every single area. And these elections, again, we'll do so. We have a message for everyone. So they're hiding. And naturally, they will try to use obstruction at GCOM and in the courts to prevent or to delay local government elections with the expectation that in that period they could probably cobble together some lists, or they could change the fortunes, somehow the electoral fortunes, if they have a bit more time. So in that context, you see some of the issues going on at GCOM. Now, we disagree with the characterization today that the local government minister has no power to demarcate boundaries. He does have the powers, and GCOM, once the boundaries are established, GCOM then sets the divisions and the constituencies within those boundaries. They then demarcate the divisions within the boundaries. That happened in the past. Vulcan did exactly the same thing, and we didn't do it obscenely. APNU did an obscene job. They did it for electoral purposes. We restored status quo ante in most cases. So if they reduced the constituencies from 9 to 8, we just took it back to 9. We extended some areas. So we have more people who were outside of the boundaries that were not part of any NDC were brought in like Region 1, and like in Berbice, where you had 25 villages together, we split it in 2 NDCs now. That's what happened. Here, no obscene change in boundary for electoral purposes, because we don't need that to win the local government elections. So that is what happened. We hold firmly to that view. The minister can demarcate the boundaries. It happened before in 2018. Vulcan did it. And GCOM is then tasked with demarcating the divisions and the boundaries of the divisions within the area demarcated by the minister. Now, having said that, there's one issue that we agree that can enhance transparency, and we agree with APNU on, and that is why the party issued a no objection, where we will support the list being extracted based on constituencies or in the local government bodies, and you go back to claims and objections. We believe that position of APNU has merit. We in the PPP would probably have done the same thing, and therefore that we support that process, even if it means delaying the elections for a few weeks more, to go back through that claims and objection period. And that is why we took that position, because we wanted it to be fully transparent, that people will have a chance to object to their names, that they're in the right places, etc. And you can only do that if the list is extracted on the basis of the local government bodies. As you know, yesterday the cabinet met and they finalized the award of the contract for the gas to energy project that is for the EPC. You would have been familiar with the entire process. What was done, the design work, the pre-feed work, the pre-qualification of the companies, then the requests for bids. You saw the bids that came in, they were in the public domain. The government then hired 2 international firms, Worley and Stantec, to assist us to review the bids. we then name a local evaluation team, and they finalize it. They rank Linseca, they bid as number 1, and a Chinese company number 2. These were the ranking. You would be aware that Linseca came in at $898 million. Their bid was $898 million around, and the other bid was around $700 million. In the negotiations, because a number of things in the Linseca bid were, they had provisions for a number of things that were not required as part of the manufacturer's requirement. So those were removed, and based on the original scope of the contract, the bid price, the final price came down to $759 million. So the contract now is going to be awarded. As you know, the supervision firm is an Indian firm that won the bid there to supervise the building of this contract. It is the requirement was that this project should come in 2024, December 2024 latest. There are penalties for every single day, huge penalties for any delay beyond that period. That was one of the attractiveness of the Linseca bid. They were the only one at the beginning who met this schedule. And so we are pleased, we are extremely pleased that this week we have finally wrapped these up, that the mobilization could be paid, and that we are on the way to the construction of this facility that will transform Guyana in terms of stable power, in terms of cost of power. It would allow us in 2 years' time to reduce the power cost by 50%. It will transform us from now an importer of cooking gas into an exporter of cooking gas, and that facility belongs to the government of Guyana, will belong to the government of Guyana, not Exxon. Both facility, the power plant and the NGL facility, will belong to the government of Guyana. So all the proceeds will come in. The price per kilowatt hour will be between 4 to 5 cents. The selling of the liquids, hopefully from drying the gas and cleaning the gas, the liquids we'll get at current day prices can yield us over $100 million, which can then be used to service and repay the infrastructure costs and the O&M costs for the power plant, the NGL facility, and also our contribution on the pipeline. So we think it's a great project for the country. It will make a big difference to Guyana, and we're extremely pleased that now we're about to finalize these contracts before the end of the year. Now, I saw some questions from Beverly Alert. I see she's just back, about who is Linseca, and the shrill noises coming from Ramjatan. I don't want to be unkind to her because she's just back, but right now the company has 2 contracts, ongoing contracts that are over $1.1 billion combined. He said that somehow it's a 10 million annual revenue for the company, $10 million US. That's their research show that. So it's wrong. It's wrong, totally wrong. But I'm not going to get sidetracked by that. The other issue is the carbon trade deal that we've had. We're extremely pleased about the agreement that was concluded. It represented a lot of hard work to get to this point. We had to, first of all, as I mentioned I think it was last Friday, that we had to disengage from what we considered a sterile policy that APNU had started, the Green State strategy, that they put so much effort into. And well, first of all, it was mainly done by external bodies, the draft, not local. It was never grounded in a proper consultation process. And as we pointed out, it never looked at how we will earn resources to fund the large needs of Guyana, particularly as they relate to making Guyana climate resilient. So the strategy was set up as basically as a cost to the Treasury, not identifying it as a potential source of income to monetize important aspects of our natural wealth. So in opposition, we said we will scrap it. We made it clear we'll scrap it, and why. We didn't just say we'll scrap it, and we said we had to return to a low carbon development strategy, that framework, but not confine it to the forests and to forest carbon alone, but broaden it into other areas that you're familiar with now, that I mentioned before: water management, biodiversity protection, adaptation, starting to bring the maritime economy, the marine economy, or the blue economy into our national strategy. These were all aspects that you can see reflected in the expanded strategy. And then part of it too was to explain how we can keep our green credentials and still produce oil. So there is a section in the strategy which gives you our thinking on the matter. So the process, we had to move rapidly. 2020, we had to make a decision. And so the 2020 decision to go to art was what basically, and working with art, was the one that basically yielded this result. First of all, we knew we had high quality carbon in Guyana based on the robust MRV system and our strong laws on forest protection that we had put in place for several years, and we had international verification of this. So we knew we had solid forest carbon. But the way the world works now, you had to get an international body to come and certify that separately. And that's why we chose ART as one of the certifying agencies. Now they came and they did that. And I'm gonna go through the editorial in Stabroek News because it raises a number of issues when I deal with the standards, etc. But once they certified that and the credit was issued, so when certified, we were the only, as you know, in the world jurisdictional scale program that was certified. And I went through last week about how long we fought for this and how much resistance we had against that concept, because the world still wanted to stick with the projects. And now the entire world has shifted in saying that you can only achieve permanence and lasting climate objectives if you have a climate policy or jurisdictional scale at the national scale. So the world has come around 13 years later to our view, if you saw that in the LCDs, the entire world, that you have to go with jurisdictional scale model. And then we sold it. So we're, first of all, I've seen a number of, well, very few comments, negative comments so far. And I don't see them as negative. I see them as an attempt to elucidate the debate, to make sure that people understand our view too from the government side. So, for example, the Starbuck News refers to a letter from A. Thomas Singh, who wrote about several issues, the editorial. And in that it says, important points were posited about this Hess transaction by Thomas Singh. He raised the question of additionality, the gold standard that underpins whether these agreements effectively result in reduced emissions and deforestation. Dr. Singh also adverted to the possibility that this agreement could be seen as constituting greenwashing to aid Hess' international image. In the case of oil industry, greenwashing typically occurs when a company attempts to emphasize sustainable aspects of its operations to overshadow environmentally damaging practices. So clearly, if Mr. Singh was following the debates for the last 13 years, and we were participating in this debate not from academia, from some institute in academia. We were participating in the debate in the room for policymakers, where policy was being made. We've dealt with this issue of greenwashing. We've been speaking about it for ages. So concern about this deal here being part of a greenwashing, global greenwashing, is misplaced. When I spoke at Rice University before COP26, if you go back to that speech, you will see our concern, not about the oil and gas industry greenwashing, about the developed world greenwashing the whole issue surrounding climate. And what else? We saw evidence of it at the national scale, at the level of governments, greenwashing being done. So in the United Kingdom, we saw that, we want to end deforestation by 2030. We want to abolish the use of coal. And then after COP26, they're opening up coal-fired power plants. So this is an old, sterile debate and about whether Hess will be greenwashing. The world, the developed world, is greenwashing the climate objectives now. The good thing about the Hess agreement that we've had is that it sends a signal to the market, because until now, the voluntary markets want to pay between $2 to $5 per ton. So people say, you can get $100 million. I saw somebody said that Hess will trade this back in peeping Tom, something flip it at 4.5 billion US dollars. Now the reality globally now is that these credits are being traded between $3 to $5 per ton. For the vintage credit, the legacy credit basically, from 2016 to 2020, we got $15 at a minimum per ton. So what this deal would do, it would help to trigger market development. We're hoping that everyone now in the voluntary market starts paying $15. So they should be happy that we've set a floor that will influence global markets now. Because the markets, in spite of all the great goodwill and how much they value forests, the voluntary markets are now paying $3 to $5 per ton. And there is practically no demand for it. So this is a great deal for Guyana, and it is also great as a market signal. It can move the markets. Now you saw that it's staggered. For the credits between 2020 to 2025, it will be $20 per ton at a minimum, and from those from 2025 to 2030, $25 per ton at a minimum. And why am I saying at a minimum? The $750 million over the period is guaranteed. Now, what if Hess were to flip this to $4.5 billion? We now then will get upwards of $2.5 billion instead of $750 million. Because we now, in the agreement, it says that we will share 60% of any upside. That is, if it's traded further by us or by Hess. So movement. So if it were to be flipped for a higher price and say 4.5 billion, we will walk away, instead of 750 million US dollars, we'll walk away with about 2.5 billion US dollars for 30% of our credit. So that is zero. So the UN Secretary General, at the launch of the report on the high-level expert group on net zero commitments, slams greenwashing. Really, slamming greenwashing should not do so to the disadvantage of the developing world. Should be slamming the developed world for the greenwashing that they're doing. Now, the developed world, I said before, you're worried about greenwashing. The entire world has not, and the major emitters have not committed to a sustainable pathway to net zero. Not 1.5 degrees, not 2 degrees, which is the outer limit that was set years ago to prevent a 50% chance of catastrophic disaster. Now we're heading to 2.53% based on commitments made through the Paris Agreement. And nobody is willing, as the last COP showed, to increase their pledges, particularly the developed world, to get there. So whilst we're quarreling and fighting these the narrow things here, this letter writing about, greenwashing here, etc., they're losing sight of the big justice argument. The developed world does not want to deal with its responsibilities and is not making the commitment. We can't do that in Guyana. Our global emissions, emissions as part of the global emission is just tiny. It makes practically no difference whatsoever. And that is even with us producing 1 million barrels of oil per day, it will be the same. As I said before, we'd always be net zero or carbon neutral or carbon negative. So I do wonder, what is it? So they said how much we are paying art. Now art is, what about the editorial questions art too? And art has great global credentials. They have an independent board. They're funded by the government of Norway. We paid $1.6 million for the certification of the period credits between 2016 to 2020, 1.6 million US. But we sold already 30% of that credit for $750 million. Well, not that credit, but throughout the period. But so this is a very, we consider these figures fair for the certification process, the $1.6 million. Somewhat, again, in this editorial, Winrock did work for the GFC. So now it seems as though these agencies just want to, they question, and I think it's coming from this Mr. Thomas Singh thing. Mr. Thomas Singh can't even question any of the big global issues. He's not at the forum. But he nitpicks around tiny issues here locally. Winrock, as though Winrock, because it did work for the GFC, would suddenly do something illegal to certify our credits. Our credits are robust. Our protection of the forest is robust. We did this through satellite probing, not just Winrock, anywhere in the world, because 10 years of MRV, we've had this. And they're not the ones who did the verification and certification of our credit. It's Astra Global, another company. So then he said, there's much debate on whether these HFLD credits really satisfy the criteria of additionality and even permanence that are applied by other carbon certifying standards, such as gold standard. So he's saying, they might question whether it is HFLD. They don't want to give money to countries like ours, HFLD, high forested, low deforestation countries. So, but you cannot question it, because these are the other carbon certifying standards, such as gold standards, work on projects. They deal on projects. We're talking about a jurisdictional scale. So I don't understand. You can't have a project base, which is shown in the world that they can't work to deliver lasting climate change because they can't give permanence. You can have an oasis here of good behavior in the project, and then all around major deforestation. That is why you needed a jurisdictional scale model. We are saying it has to certify the country, whether that's the only way you determine permanence and additionality and all of that. Because if you go with projects, when the project ends, or 10 people, and that brings us to carbon rights, I say, who has the carbon rights? You don't assign the carbon rights to anyone. The carbon rights, like subsurface rights, if they're not given specifically, they remain with the state. So if that's the case, everybody who got a bit of forest will say, I want to sell my carbon rights. No, and I don't think I should go on much more, but because these things do require some level of response. Now, let me make it clear that we are so pleased that the indigenous communities worked on this. We believe the National Tushaus Council is the NGO that really matters most in this country, because it's made up of the elected leaders. So it has to be accountable to people. Some of the other NGOs are great. They're involved. They were all invited to participate on the multi-stakeholders meeting, and they were very supportive. But the National Tushaus Council is the primary interlocutor with the government. And at that meeting, a resolution was passed that they wanted this to go forward, and that they said that the 15% that will go directly to Amerindian communities, there will be more money going, but through other things. For example, if we have to do a project on addressing drought in the Rupunoni or something else, that will be funded from other sources. This money goes, the 15% goes directly to the indigenous communities. They will determine its use. And the forest in the Guyana owned by indigenous people is less than 15%. So even if you look at it from that perspective, that is forested lands. Over the period, that's $23 billion. This is only 30% of the credit. $23 billion will go to the indigenous communities. Based on the payments in 2 weeks' time, you would have $2.4 billion that will be ready to go to the Amerindian communities immediately. Their 15% share in a couple of weeks' time will be ready. It will be equivalent to $2.4 billion. That's the 15%, and these would be there. So we're very pleased that this will make a big difference. These communities have been working on their village development plans for a long time, and they will then make the decision to what they want funded from these areas. I saw there's been a number of issues about the 8%. I think I dealt with that a bit about before, about what has happened and how many people more are employed, and what from the Treasury we have done to help to alleviate the cost of living increase caused by COVID and the increase in oil prices, the policy measures as well as direct transfers to people, the growth in employment opportunities that presents more income to families, the fulfillment of promises relating to our children and the joint services, etc., that puts more money in people's pockets, like the bonus and the grant. The people I pointed out that we keep. There was a view that we'll have no salary increase for the public servants. There was a salary increase. The sugar workers will get also a 8% increase in their salary. So that's we decided that the sugar workers will also benefit from the 8% salary increase. And so we'll continue to help different communities. Thank you very much.
Tim King, Oil Now. Vice President, the government handed a contract to DP Oil for the marketing of Ghana's crude for a year.
Yes.
The ministry put out a bizarre press release. It said that BP got the contract for a marketing fee of essentially 0.00. What is BP being paid for this contract?
So the contract should be available online. So go and see the contract yourself, and then it should be in the ministry website. Okay, and go through it itself. So there was a marketing commission before. All of the other transactions, when we had gone before, there was a marketing commission. This time there is none of that. It's zero.
Okay, on the gas to energy fund.
So it's zero, and the contract should be online. That you should get it there, and you can review it yourself.
Okay. No marketing commission.
Okay, on the gas to energy project, there have been some discussion about the fact that because the estimated cost for this project has grown more than you had expected it to be, whether you would be able to offer the same 50% slash in the cost of power. So could you explain?
Sure. We ran the simulations when we came up with between 4 to 5 cents per kilowatt hour. That would be the total cost of generation. We ran it at the new numbers. So a higher figure than was there in the period when pre-inflation, the period before inflation. So we are very confident that that will not change the cost per kilowatt hour between 4 to 5 cents per kilowatt hour, which we will then sell at 15 cents per kilowatt hour. Now it's being sold between 30 to 35 cents per kilowatt hour. So we are confident that that will not change the 15 cents per kilowatt hour that we were targeting.
You say government anticipated any increases and catered for that in the figure?
Yes, so when we ran this simulation to come down to 4.4 to 5 cents per kilowatt hour, we ran it on higher numbers. That's how the simulation was done. And that gave us 4 to 5 cents. If we had run on the old figures, it'd probably be below 4 cents per kilowatt hour. And that gives us a lot of room there still, because we're selling at 30, 35 now, and 4 to 5 cents. And then, as I said before, the sale of the liquids will then allow us to pay back for the infrastructure. So effectively, the power comes into us at free, basically. If we can pay for the operation and maintenance costs and the capital expenditure from the sale of the liquids, then really we're getting the power, and the gas comes in for free. We're getting the power for zero, effectively.
So is the entire cost of this project being paid for cost oil, or is the government?
No. That's why I'm saying the cost oil part is the pipeline, and that is, we're sharing that, okay, between Exxon and the government of Ghana. And we are on the NGL facility and the power plant. Those will belong to the government of Ghana. So we own the gas that comes in, the 50 million cubic per day. We own that gas. We will get all the liquids when the gas is processed to go into the power plant. We'll get all the power, and then we'll get all the liquids. 100% of the liquid would belong to us. There's no 50-50 split there, because we own that. So we get 100% of the cooking gas and etc., which is about 3 times more than what we use now nationally. So we'd have to export. And there'd be other liquids too, not just cooking gas.
So the 759 million is coming out of the consolidated fund?
No, we're structuring this in a way. In this year's budget, there is money, I think $20-something billion for the first payment. And then we're trying to structure this maybe through a loan where we'll be approaching Exim Bank, US.
And you haven't sorted out the portion of the pipeline that the government is contributing to?
No, we're not cutting the pipeline in half and and then own this piece and Exxon own.
No, I mean, how
but
much are you
the project, yes, that is part of it too. And that could be covered from the sale of the liquids.
Okay.
Yes, good afternoon.
I have prepared a few questions. I don't know how much you'll take.
All right, go quickly and I'll try to answer all of them. Go quickly though. Yes, I'm making notes. Yeah.
Fifth oil project you're moving to approve.
Fifth, right, oil project, yes.
Will Guyana see any further benefits?
All right, that's one. Fifth oil project.
Talking about ring fencing, full liability coverage.
All right, I got that.
Royalty or any other?
Yeah.
No. All right. Will you be seeking your companies paying at least the country's taxes on the fifth project? Corporation tax on that.
Okay, all right.
All right.
Here's the same question
Okay.
you're asking me.
All right.
Yeah.
No, I want to be very
Oh,
clear.
okay.
Very clear.
You want to make
I
a
wanna be-
speech, man?
No,
Yeah,
I just want to be specific, sir. I'm talking about fencing, full liability coverage, and corporation tax.
You know what you're asking me? Well, I called to a place. I order a plucked chicken, and the person said, and then I asked the man, "Are you gonna pull out the feather by the tail,
No,
and also the other things?" The plucked chicken is that we made it clear publicly that projects under the Starbrook block, that they will enjoy the same terms as were there in the 2016 agreement. That's it. The fifth project is done under the Stabroek block. That is the block chicken.
No, sir.
Yes, that's a block chicken. You're going to ask me.
I am
Right.
talking, you're going to approve a fifth project.
Under the Stabroek block, in the Stabroek block. In the Stabroek block. That's the fifth project.
Okay.
In the Stabroek block. So that's you asking me about the feather
that's
now,
the answer,
by
right?
the tail and the feather by the foot.
Is that the answer?
Right, yes. That's the answer. I told you, you may not agree with it. You don't agree with it. Not that you may not, you don't agree with it.
Okay.
But you have the answer there. Let's go on to
Okay.
the next question. You have the answer.
The PPP manifesto says better contract management.
Right. Better contract man.
Management.
Right, yes.
Now, you're approving the fifth project. We're not talking about the Stabroek block agreement anymore or contract. We're talking about what you promised, better contract arrangement. and
So,
management.
so we said we believe we can get more from that the agreement. We don't agree, you know that. The 2016 agreement, we believe, is lopsided. We will fix it in the future. We said we believe, however, better contract management, we can get more from the existing contracts. So let me go through what we promised and how far we've come on the reform agenda, because we've had limited time and we've had to move on several things. The first is the local content legislation. We said in our manifesto we'll pass that because we believe we can force the company by law now to split contracts. They have to advertise it, what they were not doing before. And secondly, there are carve-outs. Now you may believe the carve-outs are minimal, but you talk to the hundreds of Guyanese companies that have seen now business being done, and you ask them what used to happen before the local content law, they will tell you about the difference. So for us, that was a crucial thing. It's estimated that about $700 million per annum of business can come here because of that, from rentals, from transportation, from logistics, all of these areas, security, catering, etc. Catering alone is multi-million-dollar business. So that is the first thing. We did that. Check. Two, we said we will reform the Natural Resources Fund Act. We did that. We said we will criminalize non-disclosure. We did that in the act. The Minister of Finance can go to jail for 10 years should he not publish in the official gazette every receipt that we have within 3 months. We did that. We changed other elements of it. You heard what the international community said about the changes, that it promotes transparency. Second thing we promised. The third area, we said we will reform the fiscal, that whilst we're now renegotiating the Stabroek block, any other agreement moving forward for every one of the blocks, not those only to be auctioned, the new ones, but including those that are already assigned, like the Kaichor and the Kanji blocks and every other block, all of those will have to now comply with the new fiscal terms. Exxon is a part of the Kaichor, they're part of Kanji, and all of the others. So not only new, but the existing one, except Stabroek. So we've now changed the fiscal terms. You saw that. 65% maximum for cost recovery. Smaller blocks in the future so that we didn't need to ring fence. 10% corporate tax when it was 0 before. A 10% royalty moving up from 2% royalty. So we changed those. We said we will have a rewritten PSA that will strengthen key provisions, because we believe the last PSA, a substantial part of the draft came from Exxon itself. We're in the process, we've just awarded a contract, and in 2 months' time, that will be completed. We rewrite the whole PSA versus new fiscal terms. People in the future, everyone would have to sign those, strengthening enormously. We have awarded a contract now to do the laws. We said the Petroleum Act, which was passed in 1986, can't defend national interests enough. It's not fit for modern day management, and therefore it has to change. Hopefully by March we will get that to the Parliament again. These are some, there are some other measures. I can't remember all. We said we'll auction. We will not give out contracts in the future the way they were done in the past. You come in, you apply for a block, you get it. That in the future, we will go out to auctions. We said that in opposition. Today, we have gone to the, formally launched the auction. And the conditions of the auction now, people used to say, oh, there was a signing bonus of $18 million for the whole country. To get a bid, to get a block now, in the 11 shallow areas we've auctioned, we don't know we'll get bids for all. But before you get a block there, you have to pay at a minimum $10 million in signing bonus. There are 3 blocks that are in the deep. You have to pay at a minimum $20 million for each block as a signing bonus now. To sign to explore, not to sign to produce, like what APNU did. The 18 million was signed to produce. This is the sign to explore. So we left it open for Guyanese companies too, because we had a conflict between that to emphasize whether we were criticized in the past that you're giving blocks to people who don't have expertise. But if we insist on expertise, that means our local people can't put in bids. So we are saying if they want to come up with the money, they're not excluded from the bid, they come up, they can then flip it too if they wish to make money and then go on and get someone else in, because they would have already paid the 10 million or the 20 million to get the blocks. So they can make money if they wish, the local, but now there's a cost to that, everyone. So we promise all of those things. We're delivering them. Every reform we have promised by March of next year, we will have delivered on the reforms themselves. Where we are lagging behind now is on operational efficiency, competencies, etc. So what the next phase has to be is in earnest moving to build that capacity at GRA. They've already started. We're trying to recruit people to audit, separate. That is for tax purposes. So there is a unit that was created here. We had some setbacks with good quality people. We believe we can get more qualified Guyanese to go in there. The commissioner is looking. We have to do that. We started building some capacity with the local audits already. I gathered a report, it's about completed. You will see what the findings are, where we insisted on a partnership between locals and foreigners. But that has to go, as we build capacity, we can go more real time, not a big gap between the expenditure and the audit done. So that is an area we still to work on. Thirdly, real-time monitoring. To get a feed from the fiber optic cable that's coming in, but our own satellite technology to be real-time on the rigs and the FPSOs. So we can track instrumentation, measure that the right amount of oil we are getting for national purposes, all of that, safety, etc. That's the next wave of the reform, operational independence. So these are some areas we still need to work at building, but we've been running at 100 miles an hour trying to get through the big reforms and getting the framework in place so that we have a world-class law in place by mid-year, but we have a world-class PSA in place. We have a fair fiscal formula. We're monitoring we have a good local content policy. That is the building blocks of a modern architecture for managing the oil and gas industry. We then have to move to strengthen EPA and its capability to manage, track, respond to environmental issues if there are any of those. We're still lagging a little bit behind on those two. But remember, they're limited capacity and we're running. The other, so we said through better contract administration. So that's one. Those are the areas how we are moving forward. We managed to get them to pay for more audits on board. We got them to agree now through the EPA permits, that's through better contract administration, to agree to treat wastewater at a higher standard before it's released. We got them to commit to cradle-to-grave management of waste. We got a tax in for on the basis of carbon, $45. Although, you see, for as carbon, $15, we're struggling. We're getting $45 for flaring on this, although we have a zero carbon flaring. That's better contract administration. We believe on the gas that we're getting free, that's better contract administration. We're getting more out of the same contract. So we're very consistent. But these things, we have a limited number of people. And they're very complex too. We had to, in going through that fiscal formula, we went through 50 iterations. We had to get a lot more from the new contracts in the future, but we also had to remain competitive because globally, as I pointed out, I think it's how much, 60-something areas now in bid rounds. Everybody wants oil and gas money to flow there. When you look at the corporate level, the Exxon and all the corporates are cutting their expenditure on exploration because of net zero. So exploration money is not flowing everywhere. We want the explorations to continue because the more reserves you prove and you get out, you then also make more money and you sustain the momentum in the economy, something that I explained when I spoke at GoGet, because we've seen countries like Ghana. Ghana moved from, if you look at the Bloomberg article yesterday, it's a telling story about Ghana. From a country in ascendancy and very sharp on its outlook, practically its debt is traded at distress levels now. It's traded at distress levels from that period. You have to be very, very cautious. You don't splurge, one, and two, that you don't borrow unsustainably. And that is why I mentioned at GoGet, every cent we borrowed, it has to go through a rigorous testing about future capacity to repay. And we have not until now contracted a single variable interest debt. When unlike some of the countries, these early countries, including in Africa and Ghana, they contracted loans that are at variable interest. So when the interest rate moved now from 2% to 5% and 6%, suddenly they have a balloon, huge payment, double their debt servicing. Now, that country is using 60-70% of its revenue to service debt. We're at 16% of our 6% of our revenue actually to service external debt. The total external debt is about 16% of GDP, and it will get smaller. So you have to manage all of these carefully. It is not a one-shot thing, and that's why we're happy that our reform agenda is moving pace. And we're doing better on the contract administration, but there's a lot more to capacity we have to build. We have a lot more to do.
So, sir, you're saying that ring fencing for liability for the fifth project will not be there.
Based on the explanation I gave you right at the beginning.
Yes, nothing will change.
That it is part, because you ask these questions and you know the answers. You know the answers. You didn't come here to get an answer. You know you're a smart man. You know the answer. So I would say this everywhere. I know that's one thing we want to do. We want to make sure that people understand the thinking. How are we going to get more oil and gas money to keep the job momentum and everything else, transform this economy, get to a GDP of $35,000 per capita by 2030? The only way you do that is by remaining competitive too, but taking more. And that's what we have done. It is these balances that have to be struck. You can't manage on the basis of extremes. And all along, people think it's easy now. Look, they're called to shut down any funding of oil and gas resources. Just imagine tomorrow we have to shut down here. All the momentum we see on now I hear about 20 new restaurants opening in Guyana. Now some of them are very high priced, but it's because of the changing nature of our society. We have 7 new hotels, another 3 or 4. You think without momentum, and we have a contractor core, supply, people buying supply vessels, dredges, Guyanese companies importing cranes, because of that, what they're anticipating. We have to keep that momentum going. And one of the way of doing this is to keep approving new projects. Because if the new projects are approved, then they have spin-off benefits on the economy.
Lack of ring fencing on these new projects being approved is lessening the share to every Guyanese.
Yeah, but the thing is that is why we addressed it in the new fiscal terms. You heard I mentioned about ring fencing. Based on, by the way, so Exxon ring fencing we're talking about. Next year, I think it is, Exxon has to give up. They have a huge area, the massive area that Exxon has. And so next year, I think they have to relinquish 20% of that. So the 20% that Exxon has to relinquish will probably be as big as the 14 areas that we're auctioning now. So we have to go out and auction that too in the future. So there would be, next year, I think it's the relinquishment date for 20% of their area. So we'll have a lot more blocks in the Stabroek area that would be available for auction next year again.
So ring fencing is not in the fifth.
Oh, I told you about that about 10 times before. You're just becoming redundant. Yes. Yeah, you know that.
Vice President John, if I could just get some clarity for the layman who wants to know what better they can get from the oil resources that we have. Since Glenn Lyle has his paper to rant all the time, I don't think he should be ranting at the press conference. He has a paper to do that. Government has taken a decision to auction off blocks, and that is different from the methods used in the past. How, for the layman, what the contracts are going to look like? Are they going to be different? So when you reach the stage that people win those blocks, what are those contracts going to be like?
Okay, so you see, I'm a very pragmatic too. We're not in a very convenient way, but I think we're all pragmatic people. And we have, so people, we hear that too. The world rats, oh, the Hess deal is a bad deal. And I say to them, can you find a deal, somebody else who isn't just comparable to that, but not the oil company or anyone else. We're willing to sell the 70% of our credit. They can go out, Mr. Singh or anyone else, all of the people who gripe, can go and find these great people out there who are willing to pay a lot of money for us. They wouldn't do that. They complain a lot. You have a ton of complainers, but getting things done, earning money for this country, getting it invested, changing our lives, a different story. So the second thing is that we now have tendered. All of the people who think that the oil and gas companies are making a killing, they have an opportunity to make a killing too, the locals. Mr. Lal could make a killing if he wishes. He could buy up all these blocks, although you can only get 3, right? If you tender for all, you can get 3. That's the maximum we'll give. And then invest and make up billions of dollars like the others. You can get somebody, if that's the case, to do this. And then you make the money instead of Exxon, etc. So when it comes to that, I'm still waiting to, you see, when it comes to reality. Now, when I was on Glenn's program, Glenn said, we're doing solar for 3 cents per kilowatt hour. And I agree with him globally that but it's not for tied in. It's a tie-in grid to the grid. You can do that. When you add batteries to it, it starts pushing up the cost. So you were saying, why go with the gas to energy project when you could do that? So I said to him, if you can get me a power purchase agreement at 5 cents, not 3 cents, 5 cents per kilowatt hour, a long-term power purchase agreement for 5 cents per kilowatt hour, we will go with them now, immediately. We'll sign on now. 2 months have passed. We said 3 weeks, a month, and then 2 months have passed. I haven't seen anything come by. The reality is that when it comes to getting proposals in or working at a practical level, it's very different than just writing in a paper or saying something or presenting a paper in academia at the University of Guyana. It's not management of things. When you're elected, you have responsibilities to get power on in the system and get it stable and cheaper power to people. Think we can, one person now gone, we come from an environmentalist or geologist and say, oh, the water supply would be contaminated over there and all kinds of stuff. Griping, what I see. Griping. So my point is that you can, on these matters, people have opportunities. I think I missed the question that you asked. I did a bit of ranting myself.
That could cause that effect on you.
Okay.
May I continue, sir?
Is there a new?
I didn't.
Okay, yeah.
No,
Let me clarify.
Did you answer my question? Yeah. How does the phase? There's already a change in how the blocks are going out.
Yeah.
So there's changes in happening. At the end, what are the changes as it relates to the contract? Are we going to be
Yes,
looking at
right. Well, the new contract will have, and not just the ones that are auctioned, but the contracts for all of the other blocks already issued. So CGX, Kaichor, Kanji, and all the 14 other lots will have now a new law governing the sector, a new PSA, strengthened PSA, and the new fiscal terms. The fiscal terms that I mentioned, 10% royalty, etc. That's a major change moving forward.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Is there anyone else first, and then I'll come back to you, Glenn. Yes, please.
Can we get an update on the land acquisition for the gas energy pipeline? There was talk that some of the land has to be acquired
Yes.
mandatory. We have 70% of our jurisdictional carbon credits still available. What is the next step towards marketing that remaining credit? How will that system work? And you earlier you had the government had mentioned that by the end of this year they will be looking at amendments to the Local Content Act or start consulting on it or something like that. Can we get some update on that? Thank you very much.
Yes. So on the last one, I don't know if they announced that we're going to change it before the end of the year. I know we are consulting now on all of the issues that are coming up, the problems that we've had in its infancy stage, the application. And I must say, I'm so pleased because people are saying, oh, you can't get this done. It would be a humbug to the sector. It would slow down the oil and gas companies. We shouldn't do this. We should have a policy. A lot of naysayers who didn't want this at all, including especially the oil and gas companies, they didn't want a law to force them to do this. They wanted a policy. And we said, no, it had to have a legal basis and there are penalties to not comply. So, and then the issue was, oh, operationally, it would shut down our operations offshore because they didn't want to comply. And we showed it can work, it can serve its purpose without affecting the operations of the company. So, having overcome that, there's still, because it's new, and most countries didn't move at the pace at which we move. We still have some issues of clarification, some new regulations to put in place that will give stronger effect or clarity to the law, etc. So we are hoping to improve. The 1 year experience would help us really to improve, to look at the areas where we have capacity in and where we don't have capacity. So for example, on insurance, you would see that there's a complaint about Exxon and insurance, but we require Exxon and the others to have a grade A institution issue the insurance. That's from the regulatory perspective. But if the local companies don't have grade A institutions, then you have a conflict there. Because we're interested that they have real insurance that you can draw on should anything happen. But if a local body is not classified as a grade A and the regulatory requirement is grade A, then even if we put 100% in the local content law, and we're requiring elsewhere a grade A, and you can't effectively get it done. So those sorts of things have to be worked through. As I said, it's also a learning process for us, because as we implement, we need to improve. So that's what's going on now. The process of consultation, getting in all of the info, etc. The second thing is the land acquisition. So the Attorney General has been leading on this matter. He assured me that it's moving apace. There are people who have signed agreements, and there are others who are refusing to sign. They would have to compulsorily acquire those.
Is there a deadline to when we're looking to close off?
Yes, the deadline should have been already 2 weeks ago, and I don't know how it's fared, but 2 weeks ago we discussed this before I went off to Dubai. So we will. We hope that it will, but it will be done. The 70% of the credit available to us is still available. So we're taking a little breather now, but we already have proposals. There's several other companies that have reached out to us, given this the major change there, or the Hess deal. It's shaking up the markets a little bit, and we're very pleased with that. So we're not in any rush to sell off the other 70% right now, because we want to get really a good deal on them. Yes, please.
Just a quick follow-up on Ms. Garnett's question. She asked about the land acquisition process. Can you say approximately how many landowners will be compensated for their land, and what is the total value?
I don't, right now, I haven't tracked that. You can ask the Attorney General.
I'm trying to reach him. But
Oh, all right. I'd have them, because right now, they would have to report soon about, because I've not been able to, since we got back, we've been trying to put together this carbon thing, and now the auction and the finalization of the NGL and power plant. So those three things are practically done now, and so we can shift back to a little operational set of issues. I'll try to get the details and ask them to share it with you.
as I'm on the floor, if I can continue.
Yeah, sure.
Sir, as it regards decommissioning, we know that Exxon presently hold those funds. Can you explain firstly why, and can you say how much grants paid to date for decommissioning?
Yeah, well, those are by contract, they're stable contract. The PSA governs that. So those funds in there, that is why I'm saying that there has to be a rewrite of the PSA. It is not just the fiscal terms. That is why the contract is out now. We're doing it. So by mid-February, we'll have a completely new PSA, which will address those things which we believe that are not advantageous to us because people are right, they hold the decommissioning fund. So a total, I wouldn't want to comment on things that we've already commented on publicly about deficiencies in the PSA. We've done that a million times. I'm trying to fix it now. Fix it, like how we fix the fiscal part. We're fixing a number of other things in the PSA, and that's what I said earlier. It's right now a total rewrite of the PSA that we're doing.
So going forward, Your Honor, will be holding this
So I don't want to, you know how cautious I am. When Glenn was pointing out about the fiscal terms and he was trying to get me to commit on his program, I said we're in the process. We were examining it, and we came up, after we finished the simulations, we came up with the formula that we did, 10% royalty, 10% taxes, etc. That we're in that process now. I don't want to be premature again about its components, but we'd have to have that is a concern. Okay, it is a concern that will be addressed. When you see the PSA, then you, right.
Mr. Jagdeo, we learned, I believe sometime last week, that Ipadaji had moved to the court to recoup, I believe, $8 million in subvention. Just wanted your initial thoughts on that. And also the Ministry of Culture, Youth and Sport, I believe, had asked the organization to provide financial statements for an audit and stuff like that. Can you provide an update?
So yes, yes, 2 days ago I asked ANL to check with them because they said they will sue me, right, too, Alexander. So I'm checking if it has been served. So he said it has not been served as yet, although it's been in the public domain for several weeks. Because I'm actually looking forward to being sued by Alexander because I want to examine in court his role. He was listed in a public document as a beneficial owner of the company. That's a public document. So whatever else he claims, and then we want to get the details of the spending, because $500 million nearly on people on using that money and not wanting to give details is another issue. They're referring us to, they audited the reports, the financial statements. Financial statements don't give details. Who rented? Who did you rent the property from? At what rate? You know, where was the decision made? Who did you hire? How much were they earning and stuff? Because we believe it was steered to a few people. That this was money to improve the lives of Afro-Guyanese across the country, given to this body that was supposed to be an NGO, but turned out to be a body incorporated with beneficial owners. They could have easily been incorporated under the charitable organization or something, an act of that nature. They went to the Companies Act. So I'm looking at that. So the next thing is that they want to get the money released. Now the money has been appropriated, but the Minister of Finance has statutory responsibility to ensure that the money is spent. He has control of that before it's released. So the Minister of Finance requires a lot of information to see that the money is spent for the purpose that it is intended. They haven't supplied that. They don't want to supply that. So that's an interesting matter in court too. We're looking forward to that one, because a lot will come out there about how that group was using the money for political purposes. That was the same group, two of its directors, including Alexander, were supposed to speak at a forum about apartheid, the PPP government practicing apartheid in Guyana. That is what they were speaking at a forum, and they're sitting on $500 million of state money, you know. So it would be interesting. What's the other point? The third?
Oh, well, you answered that already.
I did.
But I have an additional question. While that is being sorted out, the subventions are being
Yeah.
withheld. Are there any plans to put systems in place to give back to
Yeah.
other organizations?
Yes, well, that's the other organizations had trouble with this body. They were complaining that they were excluded by this IPADG, some other Afro-Guyanese organizations. So the idea is to assist. We don't have a problem in assisting once it's done, not to hold conferences at the Marriott. We have, if they were working using the money to do seminars on how you become a contractor, how you set up a company, help people get incorporated, assist them to bid. That's how you change the dynamics, not by going to complain about the PPP government at the Marriott and do a speech there. That's not our way. But we want to work with people. So if there anybody, any organization, Afro-Guyanese or any other Guyanese who want to work with the PPP to improve their constituencies, then we are prepared to work with them. Once it's progressive, it's changing people's life, getting our people more educated or healthier or more business oriented, they can earn more, anybody we'll work with. That's our objective. Yes, please.
Just following up with 2 more questions. But this letter that was written to the BP, did the government write a counter letter?
I don't think we have, but we will. We should get around to that. We've been busy doing things, but we need to get around to that. But look at the people who wrote the letter. It's some of the biggest scamps in the country. Some of the biggest crooks in the country signed on to the letter. A man, who you got a lot of people there. So let me separate this scam business from other things, right? So pause. Let me start anew. You have a man at Lands and Survey who, what's his name again? He signed the letter like that. He sold an APNU supporter, made him pay $100 and something million for land at Ogle that he had no authority to sell because President Granger never assigned that responsibility to him as part of the gazetted responsibility. And the president is in charge of that, Lands and Survey. And unless he assigns responsibility, you can't do that. He sold the land to the person. And in the agreement, it doesn't say where the land is. It doesn't say where the land. There are no coordinates now for the land. So I just want to tell you, he sold off lands. We remember we had to settle with the Sevens issue. He sold the land there, and the land belonged to the Sports Commission. He sold that land there. He had no jurisdiction. It seems as though he was busy going around selling pieces of land. You recall all of the other big agreements that were done. People at the office of the president got land at Dalawala Creek in Linden and in Berbice near where the offshore area will be. I have a long list of things. He signs a letter there. He signs that letter. These people don't have any, and the reason is why we have to get 2 persons who would constantly remind this country of them, because the others are busy. We're busy trying to move the country forward, so we don't have enough time on them. But I have to find 2 persons who every day remind the country what they did in the 5 years. What they put people. Patterson, Jordan, this guy, Ramjatan, right, Trotman, Cathy Hughes. You will find out some shocking things that will be revealed soon. Watch it.
All right, I have a few other questions.
Yeah, sure,
On the
okay.
same issue. So we understand the government is promoting inclusivity and the one-gang movement and everything else, but there are reports that some Afro-Guyanese are using mining lands and according to them for no apparent reason. You're on the ground a lot. Have you gotten these reports?
I've had about 2 or 3 cases that came to me, and often these are disputes between individuals, not necessarily GFC. 2 persons, often 2 Afro-Guyanese or somebody else claiming the same land. I've gotten about 6 or 7 of those cases, claims from the past. And these predate the PPP, predated us coming back into office, a lot of those. So, that is it. But if they're a real case, then, and people, soon as we put the Ethnic Relations Commission in place, we need to get that in place. People should be able to go and complain to the ERC. And then the ERC can investigate, and then they can direct the government, the executive, to make changes. The reason when I was president that we put that constitutional body and gave it great powers, because if we discriminate against someone, you shouldn't expect the people to come and seek justice from you. You may not deliver the justice. So you needed an independent body to investigate. And so we said the ERC you have to have 2/3 support from the parliament to be on the ERC. They should have the powers. They can even prevent a party from contesting elections if they're using race. We empowered it tremendously. We signed that into the Constitution. So you recall when Vishnu Prasad, there was a complaint about Vishnu Prasad when Roxanne Myers was there. And the last ERC, I think they headed Stanley, who is the, no, not Stanley Smith, a lawyer. It was a minister in the past under the PNC. He Stanley Moore, yeah. So he did the investigations, and he found that the chairman of GCOM just installed Roxanne Myers. Look at the ERC report. So that time when Bishop Smith was the head of the ERC, Reverend Smith, yeah. So this is the kind of thing we need, the ERC to do that sort of thing. And then people have recourse to another body that is independent. Because, some people may not feel comfortable if you're discriminating against them to come back to you to seek justice. So that's why the ERC should function. And the courts, when the contractors, we had a procurement law, or we didn't have a procurement law on that. No. You had a few pages from the 1920s, about 4 pages of regulations in the 50s, and several ST letters that govern procurement in Guyana, pre-92. When I was president, we passed a law that gave contractors now, we set out several provisions, but gave contractors the right of appeal. If they have a right of appeal and they're not happy, so if I lose a contract, I can easily then go and appeal. I can appeal to the tender board. You're not happy there. I can appeal to the Public Procurement Commission, and I have recourse to the courts. So if anybody, for example, Patterson said that a number of people were excluded, Patterson and Hines and Nigel Hughes. Why doesn't Nigel Hughes get one of the persons who he believes that have been excluded and treated unfairly in a contract when it's adjudicated to go and file an appeal? Use the mechanism there that we put in the law, file the appeal, and if they're not satisfied with the ruling there at the tender board, then go to the court. And then all would be revealed in the court, whether it's discrimination or not. They don't like using those mechanisms because it exposes their duplicity and racism. And how they don't like using that, because then that really exposes that it's smoke.
You're referencing this assessment, so you must have had a look at the numbers. Is it that these numbers are altogether incorrect, or are they just...
No, because I just look at it and I said, well, the first question is how many bids were received from the other side. I haven't even received. Right, context, exactly. If you had no bid in there, how come? Then it's like saying, and then That's why I would like the contractors to sue, because the person who won the contract, they're saying they only got that by putting up their names because they're Indian and because there was discrimination. So people must go and say, you show me because I put in a bid on merit. So that is why I'm marching.
Let me just get to my final question on this issue. The government is basically saying outright that the opposition is a waste of time. They're not doing their jobs, whatever.
Are you saying that the opposition is
government,
a waste
I said
of
the
time?
government.
I don't recall us saying that. Kwame, do you recall saying
that
that?
many times. You said that
I'm just
twice.
joking. I've said that many times, and I say it here again today. A waste of time, yeah.
So therefore, you're accepting that the people they're supposed to be representing are therefore lacking representation.
Lacking representation. And we want to provide that. Come to us.
Okay, so that is what I'm trying to get from you.
Right, we want that. We want that. I love tomorrow if every APNU supporter come and say, we want to work. Look at our issues. That's what they're doing in their communities. In Maka, in everywhere else. Everywhere else you come in and you say to the government, you know, we have a problem. Go utilize our kids who, PNC families, they have children and stuff. We take care of the kids. We want them educated. We want to make sure they get scholarships. We want all of our children, whether they're PVP, APNU, whatever else. I don't know if AFC still exists, but they're PNC or what. But our kids educated and healthy. Why do you think we're building all these hospitals? Is for PVP people alone to use? 7, 8 new hospitals in all around the country. Why school?
Everybody. I'm talking about issues unique to black people.
Yes. So then that's it, precisely. The engagement. It's through engagement that you do this. And there are lots of people who have had that engagement, who have had a positive outcome from it. There are lots of people. And you see that reflected now in some of the comments, because it's not a monolith anymore. People are saying, hold on a minute, I've had a positive engagement. When you go around the country, there have been lots of those engagements taking place. And engagement is the key thing. And so, because really, they never, my point is not only now they've not represented, now they have an extremely mediocre leader, but many in the past too. Look at the PNC supporters, and for the 30 years that PNC was in power, how come they ended up as some of the poorest, like the whole country too? The poorest in the country after 30 years in power. No access to land and housing and many jobs and everything else. The public service at that time, the wages in public service, and that time you had about probably 80% Afro-Guyanese in the public service. It was $25 US. How come that happened? It was when the PNC was in office. So PPP is always, we were set up, I keep saying, we were set up as a national party for all of our people, to fight for independence, fight for the rights of our people. Along the way, there was a lot of provocation, external and others, that divided our people. But we remain true to that philosophically, what we're working on. Yes.
Will your party, through the commissioners at GCOM, be challenging the commission's decision on, Minister Darnwell not being able to?
Yeah, I think the commissioners, I'm hoping they would point out that it's what is reflected in the Kaicho. I'm not sure that is what was actually said, but that is an erroneous statement. I'm hoping that it is erroneous. But one thing we'll not do, what also is, like we're coming back to this race issue. We can't, anyhow, let's leave that for another time before I prolong this. Yes, go on. Anyone else?
Over to you, Manuel.
Okay, yes. Yeah.
Good afternoon, sir. 2 questions. Could you provide us with an update on how the meeting went with ADNOC, the Abu Dhabi National Oil Company, one of the largest companies in the world? What can you tell us about their interest in partnering with Guyana, if possible? And the local content legislation has been through, it will, in a matter of weeks, it will go through its first full year of implementation. And we've seen challenges by certain companies exposing certain weaknesses about the legislation. What are your thoughts, first of all, on the challenge to the legislation, and how soon can we expect you to plug some of those loopholes? First of all, were you surprised by the fact that there was even a challenge to the legislation to get the certificate? And I'm referring specifically to the Rams case.
Okay, so on ADNOC, we met with ADNOC. ADNOC does not invest outside of the UAE. It's mainly, it controls the oil and gas operation in the UAE, etc. They have another fund that does investment outside of the UAE. I think it's called Mubadala. So we've had visits from the Brazilian office of Mubadala here. They were interested in buying our oil for a refinery that they acquired in Brazil. But we were more inclined to go through an open process. It didn't suit us. So we went out to tender, and that is how BP won. So for the next year, our oil is sold here. What they are doing could be attractive on the spot, the offer, but if they don't acquire, anyhow, don't go into all of the details of it, but that happened. I don't want to get into details, but so that's on the investment side and Mubadala. The ADNOC, they do a lot of marketing, and they have a complex system for marketing their oil. We'd never be able to, they buy and sell oil too. So not just their local production. Very, very sophisticated. One of the key, the guy who heads that division now was one of the senior executives of a major international bank. They just have hired the best people. So recognizing that the volume of crude available to us, given our 50% share, might be all that we'll trade in the future. We're not going to buy oil and sell as a national level. That we needed a more modest marketing section. So we're committed to putting that in place as part of the operational improvement I spoke of earlier. So we're going to have a smaller marketing unit in the ministry that will track price movements, administer all the contracts on marketing of our crude. And they've promised that they can train all of our people and we can send them on attachment. So over the next year or so, we may have to recruit about 15 persons, top quality with maybe a degree, first degree at least, and then assign them. They agreed that I can assign them and they can work in ADNOC facilities in Dubai for a number of years, well, until they build the capacity and then come back. Maybe not a number of years, but to get them the basics. So that is my engagement with ADNOC. I met also with Abu Dhabi Exports, and there we're looking for them to fund a project in Guyana. They fund about 90% of the cost, the government 10%, and that has to do with our airport. So the cabinet has approved that to move fully to e-visa portal and to put in a number of gates at the e-gates. So in the future, hopefully within about 8 months or a year, that it would almost seem paperless coming in through our airport, but with a lot of security features, the software, the cameras that retinal scan and stuff like that, fingerprint. So they're working with us on a project to do that, and hopefully we will also send our immigration people, customs to UAE on attachments there. So that was the second thing I met. And then Abu Dhabi Fund for Development. We're working there. We also agreed to a contract that will provide a national identification card. So we are not touching the voter's identification card, the one issued by GCOM, because that's too controversial. They can continue to issue that. So you have legislation next year for a new ID card that will have a chip in it. It will be for nationals and people who are resident in Ghana. So if you're coming to work here, you have a different color card. Guyanese will have one color card. The chip can store a lot of the biometric data, you know, maybe blood type, data for driver's license, GRA, your TIN number, etc. That could be used then for a whole range of purposes, but as a secure document. We can eventually use it with this ID now, which will be secure. The system will also be able to, like what we do at GCOM now, you can't have two duplicating numbers. It has a software that shows that if two biometrics are the same, duplicating, the system will pop this up and stuff. So when Guyanese travel and stuff like that, we're hoping that maybe eventually, without having to even go to e-passport, when they come home, they can take out their card and just swipe and come in. They don't have to go through this elaborate customs and all of the immigration, etc., making it easier for that. This would also help to strengthen our security modules, the biometrics will be either the private sector, banking, a whole range of things. So that's what we are working with them on, because they have a lot of experience there. We're looking at a German, part-owned German government company and a company out of Dubai. And then the other company is G42, which is owned by the government in Dubai. They have a lot of experience at this, so we chose them. But we're trying to do it in a manner that where we can deal with the first thing. The next so as I said before, our national ID. And then if you're a foreigner now, you're coming in to work here and you have a work permit for 3 years, you will have one of these cards. Different color, but that would allow you to go to the GRA, establish a TIN, or the bank. The moment that expires, your 3 years work permit, then things start shutting down. You have to go and renew it, so we can see who's here in our country too. And that would help a lot. The next phase is probably e-passports. So these are, now we bring in this stuff from abroad, we put it on, but these would be full electronic passports with a chip. When you go around the world, it's easy. It's hard to duplicate, easy for our people to travel. Hopefully that would give us more visa-free access to some countries in the world that require secure document eventually. But it would improve the experience of Guyanese when they travel around the world or come home. We want to make sure that our people can, you know, like here, they don't have hassle at the airport and everything else. So those were all that. So ADNOC, that was it. And what was the?
I asked about the local content.
Oh, the local content, yes. I was not surprised at Ram's logistics challenge here. Personally, I believe we don't have, as I said, that go-get thing. We can be xenophobic and want expertise and capital to come in the country. So the government will never display xenophobic kind of positions or take xenophobic positions. But we also said we'd not allow any foreigner or foreign group, individual or company, to believe that they can come to Ghana and walk all over our people or our regulatory process. We never allow that. That's not who we are. We're not built that way. And so if they feel that they can do that, and I think there's been some attempt to do that, then they're wrong on it. So we will fix the loopholes that caused this ruling. We don't agree with the ruling, but we complied with it. We complied with the ruling, but we'll fix some of those issues to ensure that the local content law delivers the benefits to the people that we wanted it to deliver the benefits to. That is our people, Guyanese, that they get benefits from this, our people. And that the others have enough space to invest and to make money in this country. And they can, and they are doing that. Because outside of the carve-outs that we have had for local content, there are numerous other areas that they can invest in and bring in expertise, which we welcome. But they can't displace our people or think they can bully us or present fictitious people here, here who have no connection whatsoever to our country, and then expect to get away with it. So we are looking at it seriously, and the law would be fixed accordingly. Yes, Glenn. Anyone else before I go to Glenn?
Yes, you mentioned that from the HES deal, there's a chance we could earn upward of $2 billion.
No, I was saying that somebody said HES will flip this and make a lot of money, and they would flip it for $4.5 billion. So I'm saying that should be encouraged, because if he actually could flip it for $4.5 billion US, we will then, our 750 million will become $2.5 billion mainly, because we get 60% of the upside.
That can be done, flipping credits?
Yes, you can trade it further. We're hoping you could trade it.
Okay.
You could trade it further. We want it to be traded further because we're benefiting from an upside. If it's not done, then you understand what I'm saying? Yes, go ahead. Yeah, so your people had it wrong, Glenn, as usual. Yeah, they didn't see the purpose of the upside thing. Even Norton got that when Norton was questioning, what if they traded further, the country would lose. And the minister said, well, there's an upside, 60% we'll get. He said, thank you, minister, and sat down. He knew, even Norton got that. All right, please.
Thank you, sir. During her presentation at COP27, Barbados Prime Minister said to the world leaders, they must increase taxes on oil companies. The UN Secretary General also joined that call.
Yeah.
France, UK, Germany, Canada, Bulgaria, just as yesterday, India, several countries have upped the taxes, windfall taxes on the super profits these are companies making.
Yeah.
What say of Guyana?
So my point is that, one, the Prime Minister of Barbados was speaking about the creation of a fund to address adaptation, mitigation to a lesser extent in some of the countries, and compensation for loss and damage. So the key easiest thing, she was saying, is one way is to tax the oil companies, a windfall, etc., and to create the fund. We don't have a problem if those are done in the developed world jurisdiction. But that money will go to a global fund. I was part of a high-level panel that the Secretary General, when Ban Ki-moon was there, put together. It had a number of us, I mentioned it. Larry Summers, who was the Secretary to the Treasury in the US. Prime Minister of Norway, myself. Sri Mulyani, who went on to become Vice President of the World Bank. Christine Lagarde, who became the head of the IMF. A number of other people that standing. She was at that time, I think, the minister in France. Our biggest argument, you had a number of people pushing for, and this was over 10 years ago, 13 years ago. Oh, they're all pushing to tax airlines and oil companies and everything else, some of them. And we said, where would the money go? So the money goes into a global fund. So I say, if you're in the Bahamas and you start taxing airlines and the Caribbean, and make our destinations uncompetitive, and then we have to give the money over to some global fund, how does it help the people of Bahamas? Because this is to fund global action, not domestic action in these places. It's a creation of a global fund. So if we have to start taxing here on the basis of those proposals, we have to, it's not for the improvement of our fiscal conditions, it is to support global climate actions, because the developed world has refused to put money, their promise in this global fund that they should put, because the highest concentration of greenhouse gases have historically come from them. They now want it to be done by all the countries in the world. So India must pay a share, Guyana must pay a share, everybody to the global fund. That is the issue that people keep missing. It is a lack of the justice. These things can't be plucked out of from speeches without understanding their global context. That is not to help Barbados or Guyana if we tax. If we had a tax that she was proposing, that a tax be instituted on oil companies to fund global climate action, when the other countries in the world have refused to fund global climate action. So those are, now the UK has major fiscal problems now. You saw what has happened. Several governments have changed there. They have major fiscal. They're looking to tax their oil companies to plug a fiscal deficit, a gap that they have. We, in Guyana's case, here, we are still looking to get more companies to come and explore here. We're looking to come. These developed countries will continue producing oil, the US, Norway and the others, and all of the others. Their companies, even if they tax them a bit more, they'll continue producing oil. But you know what they want? They want to veto any expenditure on infrastructure to do with oil and gas in the developing world. So it is understanding this. We're not a country anymore that plays only in a national, local context. That there is a bigger framework that you have to almost craft your policies to keep your support for global climate actions intact, but in a way you have to take care of yourselves and your people first. And that is what we are doing. This money would allow us, when the entire Caribbean now is waiting on that fund to be created, which may never happen, we are now going to earn $750 million at a minimum that would start putting in greater Hope-like canals, more Hope-like canals, so that in region 5 and 6 and 3 and 2 and all those places we can manage water better, can strengthen our sea defenses, can put more pumping capacity along the coast, because now the rainfall coming with greater intensity, the water accumulates now. When you open the coker, 4 hours not enough to get all the water out, so you have to build pumping capacity. We have to fund hundreds of millions of dollars of need. Nobody coming to the table with this money. We've had pledges for 12, 15 years. That's why we have to act consistent with global targets on climate change, but in I don't like saying selfish, but in a nationally focused manner. And that's what we're doing. That is why sometimes it looks like we become a little impatient with some of the little nitpicking, because they would never, what they would say to the government of Guyana, none of them would even go and say in the fora that matter, or to the developed world, or some others who are the villain. They're the villain. You should see the negotiations. But some of these people wouldn't even enter the room where those things are, where this wanton irresponsibility is being displayed by the people who are the biggest polluters in the world. They don't want to make commitment, but they want every small country to commit to something.
Sir, those countries that I talked about, they raise their windfall taxes on oil companies from as low as 10 to 35% for their country and their people,
Okay, all right.
not for any world forum.
Okay, all right. No, that's
And
why,
I'm
yeah.
asking- The question I'm asking is.
No,
Guyana-
I'm telling you, I just said to you the week UK is doing it to fill a fiscal deficit. I'm telling you, you quoted Mia Motley. I was telling you the context of our speech. The context. Mia Motley doesn't have an oil company to tax, so she can't say that for Barbados. You understand? So she is speaking in the context of a global fund because she recognizes that the developed world is not meeting its commitment, and we need to create that fund. So these is a complex issue. The same countries that want to tax the oil companies are saying now they're pushing Saudi Arabia to pump more oil. The United States almost sanctioned Saudi Arabia because Saudi Arabia said, we want to cut back on our oil production. President Biden said there may be consequences to this because they want more oil, cheaper oil in their countries because it's pushing up cost of living. So suddenly they want more oil and cheaper oil.
Guyana, sir.
Yeah.
Super profits are being made right now from Guyana.
Well, you can make some super profits. I'm hoping you get very wealthy by bidding for one of these blocks too.
So Guyana is not going on with.
No. You know my position on that. You're just coming here to
So there's
ask me things that I've been in the public domain on. Now, I got to put an end to redundancies. So,
windfall tax, sir.
yes, you asked that about 400 times before, and I answered that at every press conference. And so, my position has been clear on the Stabroek, on windfall, on everything else. So I don't want to I just complain about being in a brain dead environment to some of my staff. Not that they were brain dead, it's just that here in Ghana it's circular. Every time I come to a press conference, it's on one, the Starbuck block, racism, a couple of other things. You can't move on.
No, you can't involve everybody in the one thing. If you speak on certain aspects, of course we have to ask questions on those things. Every time you come to a press conference, you speak on racism and you speak on oil.
Yes. Well, that's precisely because that's all in the newspapers every day that I do. So that is the policy. Where have we ever had a proper policy discussion? Every time I come, it's the same question. Have you not heard the same questions before? Did you not hear?
I have never asked those questions before, sir.
You ever heard those questions before?
You have promised, sir.
Have you don't want to get involved now? All right, you never asked this question before?
Sir, you have promised to release the names of the beneficial owners.
Go.
Saicho and Kanchi.
Oh, okay. It's the same
And the
thing.
mining contracts.
Same. Yeah. Well, I
You say I have to ask it back because you promised, sir.
Okay.
You promised the nation.
All right.
to have
So
these-
could you please deal with Vikram Bharat? Maybe Vikram Bharat has a higher
This is
tolerance
for the
level than
fifth
me.
time- this is
Right.
the
So
fifth
can you
time
please
saying-
deal with Vikram Bharat has the portfolio? Talk to Vikram Bharat about that the next time he goes to a press conference because I think I've given answers. You promised me to issue a public apology if you could not get front page in your newspaper, if you couldn't get a company to supply power to us at 5 cents per kilowatt hour.
Sir,
Where is that public
sir, the
apology?
company made contact with who you addressed them to?
No, I didn't address, I never made contact with the company.
You
What's the name of the company?
I don't know the name, I sent you the email.
You sent
I
me,
sent you the email of the company.
you don't
that
know
is
the
doing-
company that could supply the
I don't
power.
have to remember that's not my interest, sir. My interest is about my share of what I'm.
No, no, no,
doing in the
your
country.
interest, you lied to the people of the country that you could get power sold to the government of Ghana at 3 cents per kilowatt hour. And that one of the reasons why we shouldn't go with the other project, which was like 4 to 5 cents per kilowatt hour.
The gas to shore project, sir, you're talking?
Yes, yes, you said that.
You have
So
never held a press
I would think
conference.
out of courtesy that you would know the company so that we can all verify this company, the whole country, the same way like how you call for verification. You don't even know the company. You give the company my email address and just say send it to Jagdeo and you
No,
don't all right.
never sent them that, sir. They
All
sent
right.
it to me,
Anyhow,
and I forwarded it to you.
Right. So the rest of the questions you can
Vice
ask.
President Jagdeo, if I may, I'm looking at the comments here and I'm getting messages on WhatsApp. And the citizens are becoming growingly frustrated with these kind of banters. There was the boat operators stopped working, people have issues with renew. The cost of living is going up, and you're speaking to Mr. Glenlal, who is saying my issue is, like the opposition leader is making claims of racism. The madam here asking just so the media is moving away more from what the people needs are to their personal needs. So there are issues of racism, not one body comes and speak about that. Now I'm reading from a question asked by a citizen here. You're speaking to Glenlal, who obviously is speaking for his own, has to pay people to come and protest. I don't know who he's speaking for, what authority he has. The citizens are asking when you guys are going to get serious with the press conferences and address issues
All right.
and concerns that people are having.
So the questions could be asked about anything here. You, since the citizens want to find out too, I don't have a
Cost of
problem
living
asking the
issue.
cost of living
Burning
issue. Right, yeah.
concerns.
On the cost of living issue, I started off by saying we have outlined a slew of initiatives. I can repeat them again. I don't wish to do so, but I can repeat them about what steps we took to do two things. One, to increase income so that more people can have more money in their pockets. Through the 11,000 people we've hired part-time jobs that put over $6 billion in their pocket, and the $30,000 for our school kids, another $6 billion has gone into the pockets of their parents. That's more disposable income, our pensions, through the cash grants, etc. And then on the cost of living side, we've kept electricity and water rate constant. If you look at the last budget, we went for supplementary for those, just to subsidize, because the state has to subsidize water and electricity, because when the price of oil went up, as in other countries. If you look at I have this table here. These are the double-digit inflations. I was writing on it because it never came up. But if you look at countries with double-digit inflation, you'd see practically the whole world. Double-digit inflation. In Suriname, it says here 41.4%. Venezuela, 100, our two neighbors, 156%. So inflation. That is what we're at. We're single-digit inflation because of that intervention. Sorry, some of these interventions, because we didn't allow electricity prices to go up beyond the past. We didn't allow water prices to go up. We subsidized it. We absorb it. We changed the rate of assessment of taxes not to reflect the higher freight increases. We're now giving free steel and cement to people who are building low-income houses. All of these are measures that we took to try to cushion the cost of living increase. Well, oil prices have started to come down, and the supply chains around the world have started to normalize. And so we hope that eventually the inflation would go down, and the prices for cooking oil and everything else will return to normalcy, because they reflected big global shortages. So that is it. We've done this. We've explained it before, but I can't. You see, The reason why Glenn here is that he keeps going at this all the time, but it's at some stage we got to bring it to an end, because it's like every time we talk about the same thing over and over, and I'm sure he doesn't remember asking it himself, but everyone else remembers him asking the same questions.
This oil is Guyana's future.
Yes, I agree. Yeah. And that's why
And you're telling me.
I hope you were part of that future by bidding. We'll see you soon at the auction. Thank you very much.
I have
Thank
a
you.
question for you.
All right. Why don't you submit